All right, guys. It's been a while since we've been allowed to talk about our redacted teams. I'm even in the old best ball breakfast part of my streaming, and we have a very special show today. We have Jon Jackson, aka John Boy, on. We are going to break down Underdog's playoff contests. I got addicted to these last year, and I have a feeling I'm about to get addicted to them again. Let's do it.
Bro, I'm telling you, hop in these drafts when these idiot streamers are trying to draft and talk to the chat at the same time. It's so plus EV, bro.
Oh no, I think I accidentally just took Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs. What do we call that? A no-no.
No way, you don't have to set your lineup. That's incredible. And recently eclipsed 23%, and I'd much prefer it to be in the more 21 to 22% range.
All right, welcome back, John. That takes me way back. I haven't played that since probably I don't know, first week of September. I've been deep into the DFS weeds, so glad to be back in these best ball streets here with you.
I know, man. I'm excited. I'm repping the hand builders sweatshirt today because playoff best ball is just peak hand building, right?
It is. And talk about, one of the main things about hand building is your lineup has to tell a story. And if there's a format that requires you to tell a story more than playoff best ball, I don't know what it is.
I know. Well, my favorite part about doing these drafts is you start the first couple of rounds thinking you're telling a story, and then all of a sudden your story has to change. But by the end, you're still telling yourself a story. It's just might be a little thin by the end of round 10.
For sure. Let's not make any assumptions on everyone knowing exactly what we're talking about. Why don't you just kind of set up for the people how these contests are formatted, and then we can kind of get into the specifics of how the contests differ even between themselves, but just kind of the overall idea of playoff best ball here.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally the biggest thing that it makes these fun is you pick your draft of 10 players before the playoffs kick off, and you're locked into that throughout. And so every time, every round that advances and your players lose, you're not redrafting. You're stuck with who you got kind of through the end. And so depending on the different formats, you're in like a 6-person draft, and I know we'll do a couple of these later. You're in a 6-person draft, taking your 10 rounds deep to build a roster. You're starting a quarterback, a running back, 2 receivers, and a flex. And then each round after that, whether you're at the top or the top 2, you advance, and then you just kind of keep having to, similar to like the normal best ball, you have to keep hitting the top of your groups that you get randomly put in after the first round. To keep advancing to the finals. But then, in the finals in the Super Bowl, there's it's a pretty small pool. I mean, it's down to like 52 teams to like 94 teams is what it is this year. That is vying for the big prizes. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I will say that it's like I did quite a few of these last year, and I've already done a lot this year, and it's definitely a war of attrition just getting to the final rounds. And you've got to be able to take some swings, and you know that you're probably gonna lose quite a bit of your teams just with some first round bad luck, and you're just hoping a couple of them can kind of bubble up there.
Yeah, and so I think kind of the way I think about it is, there's 2 main goals here, and those goals are at opposition with each other. The first kind of overriding goal is you want to be able to field a really nice starting lineup during the Super Bowl. So ideally, you have correctly predicted which 2 teams are going to be in the Super Bowl, and you've loaded up on players, preferably studs, from those 2 teams. Now that is kind of in opposition with also you need to emerge from the first round, from the wild card round. And whether it's because of buys or how you kind of distribute your exposures, that might be hard to do, because as I was listening to the Underdog Spaces today too, I heard Nick Redmond talking about how maybe there is room for grinders to build really high floor teams that escape from the first round and make money that actually don't have much first place equity. So you're competing against teams like that as well. So how are you kind of thinking about those 2 dynamics where we're ultimately trying to kind of thread that needle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's The first round equity is what I start to think of like when you get towards the later rounds, where if I'm deciding on, like going for like a fourth Bills player or a fourth or fifth Packers player or something like that, and there's still like, maybe a Joe Mixon or a Jamar Chase or something available. And, instead of like continuing down my Bills stack, if I can pivot and grab like Mixon plus Higgins or something like that at the end of a draft, the Bengals maybe don't have a shot to make the Super Bowl, but what is Emmanuel Sanders really going to get me? Anything for the first couple rounds. Maybe he'll be useful in the Super Bowl if they get there. But that's kind of how I think about it a little bit. Is I want to target like my additional first round kind of booster players towards the end, where when people are mostly trying to like fill in their stacks, going for fourth or fifth kind of players, that instead of doing kind of the opposite and hammering like a bunch of strong guys early, which is kind of what I think a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, and I always think it's instructive to kind of see the kind of lineups that did well last year. I do have the winning lineup from last year's gauntlet. So Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Brady, Evans, Gronk. So that checks out, nails the Super Bowl, nails the studs. Then you have this really interesting detour here: Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, Landry, Austin Hooper. So a very heavily concentrated, correlated bet on the Browns. He gets the two kind of ceiling games from them. And then you have Leonard Fournette, the final round pick, an absolute playoff league winner. And to me, this draft has like all the perfect elements, right? It hits the playoff matchup. It's concentrated on studs. It goes all in on the team that gets the two, ceiling performances, and they're two and done. And then you hit the unique playoff league winner with one of your final picks. I mean, this is the perfect draft.
Yeah, and the like where he got the Cleveland stack, I think is like important, right? Because he was, they're able to load up on Chubb, Mayfield, Landry, really in like 6, 7, 8 round, and that's huge when you don't have to when you don't have to spend any picks on that extra team early, and you can focus on loading up on some of the Super Bowl favorites, and then you can still get a pretty strong team like in the wild card round or in the divisional round late. That's good. And like that's for right now, the Niners, I think, are lining up somewhat in that zone. And potentially like the Bengals, like I talked about, and maybe even like the Vikings, if the Vikings are able to sneak in there. Those are all teams with big studs that either aren't getting drafted or just are really easy to make like 3-man combos at the end of drafts.
And from like an overall, obviously there's going to be different textures of construction that are viable. We have, of course, been around the drain with this on season long best ball, lots of different ways to skin a cat. What are your thoughts here? Obviously we have a 4-4-2 with the two coming from the opposite conference, the two fours coming from opposite conferences, and then the KC is the other two. Do you think 4-4-2 is a dominant construction? Are there others you're entertaining? Are there ones that you try to go out of your way to get?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a pretty big outlier, and I'd be interested to see when this one was drafted, or I forget exactly how KC was working last year, but like being able to get Hill and Kelce in the first 2 rounds is pretty awesome. And that I assume that was a pretty big outlier from most teams, because like if you look at it this year, getting a lot of people are able to get Hill plus Mahomes or Kelce plus Mahomes. You're definitely not getting Hill, Kelce, and Mahomes anymore. And so, and it's actually pretty hard to get Hill and Kelce together. So, like, in my opinion, it's kind of it's pretty dependent on like what you're able to kind of nail down early. Like I think you definitely have to have exposure to both conferences, and you want to be pretty heavy on both conferences. As far as like I would say the most teams that you want exposure to is 4 maximum, and in most of the tournaments, like where like in the gauntlet this year, and we'll talk about this a little bit. It's pretty top heavy in the first round, and so I know it's probably not the optimal play to like do well in the Super Bowl with this, but I'm trying to skew more towards building with 4 teams in the gauntlet. But then into some of the other ones, the wild card and like the Mitten that they just announced, where 2 out of 6 advance in the first round, that's where I'm really trying to load up on maybe only 2 teams, or just doing 3 teams. Obviously having exposure from one from each conference, but really when I think about it, I'm trying to get as many combinations of 4+ players in the Super Bowl within one draft. And so, and the big thing with that is pairing your quarterback with your running back a lot. And that's not something something that's a little bit like not intuitive, right? When we're drafting and season long best ball, you're always just trying to hammer your quarterback and wide receiver stacks. But in best ball, or in the playoff best ball, I think it's almost as important to get a running back and a quarterback on the same team, because really you're just trying to make it so you can field a full lineup in the Super Bowl. And if you don't have a running back there, like if you do a one off of Jonathan Taylor and like Elijah Mitchell or something, and you don't have any other like Colts and Niners, if you make a Super Bowl with whatever team you have, you're just going to get a 0 in the running back position, and you're kind of shot. And so that's kind of where I focus on. Honestly, I typically try to pair up like a running back and a quarterback early on, and then fill in the receivers later. I don't give priority to the receivers.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about the differences between the gauntlet and the mitten, but let's talk about, obviously we still have 3 weeks of the regular
Mhm.
season left to play. We have some playoff, implications that haven't completely finalized. And so, I was trying to think through this too, of like, what is your edge now versus what is your edge if you draft after week 18? And this is similar to a lot of stuff. It was with best ball heading into the year. If you're drafting in June, your chances of drafting a super team are far greater because there's more
Yeah.
inefficiencies, more unknowns. You also have the chance to have your team just get decimated by injuries, depth chart shake up. So, like, looking at that as a parallel for this, what are the edges you're trying to take advantage of now, knowing that a lot of some of these teams you draft, someone said, can you draft players who don't make the playoffs? You certainly can. And that's part of the
Yeah.
risk and the opportunity here. So how are you thinking about that as far as your strategies right now versus in a couple weeks?
Well, I think the nice thing about this format is it's kind of a zero sum, where as teams like if there's teams that were valuable, like a few weeks ago, the Chargers were really valuable because they were pretty free like towards the end of drafts. But then as the Chargers have kind of jumped up the playoff picture a little bit more, they've started to come in a lot earlier in drafts. But then that's freed up. Everybody can't get taken in the first 3-4 rounds, right? So then that's up some other teams to drop back and be of value a little bit. And so what I'm just trying to do through like a portfolio approach over the next few weeks is just always try to be early on some of these teams that are on the bubble, and try to draft them as they're a lot cheaper, or even free, like we'll call them, if you're able to just nail a Jimmy Garoppolo stack in the last 3 rounds or something. That's pretty useful. And then as like as the Niners now start to make a run and they're in the 75+% chance to make the playoffs, well, now maybe I'm focusing on the Vikings, because like Justin Jefferson is like maybe getting drafted in like a third of drafts or 20% of drafts or something like that. And if they go on a little bit of a run here and they squeak into the 7 seed, that's a pretty huge advantage, having one Justin Jefferson ceiling game over like majority of the field who doesn't even have Justin Jefferson. So as the playoff picture continues to kind of like free up and get a little bit more clear, all these value teams, there's always going to be a value team or two in there. It's just kind of how it works with more teams being shoved up near the top. And so I'm always just going to try to like stay a little bit flexible there on which value teams I'm kind of targeting.
Yeah, and one of the reasons this is so fun right now and so tough, like once you start thinking through all of these scenarios, like your brain can get in a knot, because on top of that, it's not just as easy as being like, all right, I think this team's going to make the playoffs, I'm going to play them in. Like, with the 49ers, we have, their backfield, uncertainty with Jeff Wilson and Eli Mitchell. Then you were just mentioning kind of tying your running back to the quarterback. Then you can go to the Rams. Like it seems like it's going to be a full split this week between Sony Michel and Henderson. Does that hold through the playoffs? Like, you're having to make a lot of tough decisions and assumptions. Even if you nail the team that makes it to the Super Bowl, you might not get the right pieces.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean this year, like honestly, the running back situation this year is really, really interesting because I mean, we can just go through all these teams. There was a point a couple weeks ago where Leonard Fournette like wasn't really going in the first round. He was going in the second round, sometimes even like later into the third round, right when this thing started. And very quickly, like Fournette ended up being like the most appealing running back, and now he's nicked up with a hamstring, and so we'll see what happens there. But like Fournette, if you look at the Packers, right, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, both good options. Cowboys, Zeke and Tony Pollard, both good options. Cardinals, Edmonds and Connor. Chiefs just have Clyde. Patriots just have Harris, but then Rams, Michelle and Hendo. I mean, we can keep going down the list here. There's like plenty of teams that have multiple options at running back, like you're saying. And so that's why Fournette, I thought, was like such a huge value to focus on and just start with that one running back that you want on a team that's really favored. But then like same thing with guys like Jonathan Taylor now. I mean, it's a really tough one to click on right now because we don't know the certainty. But Derrick Henry, like the Titans are pretty much a lock to make the playoffs for the most part. They're not going to lose that division, and so if they make it and Henry's healthy for a week or two, I mean, I know there was some talk about him maybe being available in week 18 or something. So if he can get a week under his belt and then come into the wild card round, I mean, that would be huge. And I think I would say a lot of drafts are having a Henry, but not many people are drafting like Titan stacks, just because their team is just so ugly right now. It's so like just playing them in DFS is horrible. You don't want to do it now on a weekly basis. But if you're of the opinion that, Julio's now looks like he's done, right? He's probably retiring after this one, and he's out for the year. But if AJ Brown's back healthy, Derrick Henry's healthy, and Ryan Tannehill, and they're guaranteed a first round game, I mean, that is a super strong team that not many people are going to have, just because people have that recency bias of Titans are not a good team that I want to focus on.
Yeah. And I think what you were hitting on too of, capitalizing on the uncertainty now, you mentioned, okay, let's shift from the 49ers to the Vikings now that the Vikings are kind of the more, long shot team to make the playoffs. And I think that's, true of anything as far as best ball as well. As much as we'd like to think we can out predict the market, as much as we think we know how a Tony Pollard versus Zeke backfield is going to shake out, the one thing we can control if we're drafting a large volume of these is the prices we're getting these at, and just letting the market kind of give us the best plays at the time. And so I think when I dive in here over the next week, that's where I'm going to really try to force myself. Peter, it doesn't matter how much you like AJ Dillon more than Aaron Jones. Like, you're not going to force that issue. Let the market decide, and you're going to have your opportunities, because we're going to have games that shift public sentiment over the next few weeks. You see a big Aaron Jones game and AJ Dillon only has 4 carries, you're probably going to start to get a discount on him. So I guess my advice to myself right now is to be very patient and not let your kind of individual player takes cloud you during this early drafting.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing too is just the rate that these things are filling up is pretty crazy. And I mean, obviously, Underdog's just gotten blown up over the last year and is really popular now. But like the wild card, was I don't know how many entries they were, but I mean that thing's already filled up, and that was so like. You talk through like the Chris Godwin situation, right? Where like obviously now nobody's drafting Chris Godwin, right? He's out for the year. He's not going to be. He's only going to be in a handful of these gauntlet teams. But like he was 100% in drafts of the wild card. So at some point, like it doesn't really matter if you're trying to hold off and like gain as much information as possible, because like you're still drafting with the same timeline of people that have all the same information as you. So like I would assume that the gauntlet is going to take a while to fill. It's a heftier entry fee. It's a really big contest, so that one's probably gonna go for a while. But like the Mitten, I wouldn't be surprised at all at this $5 entry. Like if that thing fills up really quickly, and there's a Mitten 2 and there's a Mitten 3 like before the playoffs even start. And so I would just like for people that are maybe wanting to kind of hold off a little bit until there's a little bit more clarity, I would just say kind of lean into that and just go for it, drafting with people that all have the same kind of expectations now, because there's no guarantees that the mitten like doesn't fill before, week 17 starts or something, and there's still 2 more weeks to go before playoffs.
Yeah, and the mitten, the puppy drafts over the summer are pretty good comparable for the mitten. And we saw, Best Ball Mania took most of the summer to fill, whereas those puppies, they were ripping those off. We ended up getting 3 puppies. I assume we're going to see that as well. I know myself, even as someone who knows he's going to get massively addicted to these, I've even still been a little bit in DFS mode, season long mode, winding down. Once the people kind of all mentally shift over here, which I think we'll really see fully after week 17, that's when things are going to get popping. And like you said, $5 is a nice price point to kind of mess around and get familiar with the market, get familiar with drafting these. And I know how like I approached best ball throughout the year. I did all the puppies, BBM, and then I saved most of my big dog drafts until the final week, because I was much more comfortable being high risk with a $5 puppy draft than I was, with a $250 big dog draft. So that would be another piece of advice. Get comfortable, and then you can hop over to the gauntlet.
Well, because I would say the most important part of these drafts, like if you're listening to this and you haven't done a single one yet, the most important part is getting familiar with the ADP and just like where players are going and how you can be flexible as the draft goes on. And so obviously coughing up the $25 to learn the ADP for 5 or 6 drafts is a little bit hefty. So I'm happy that they opened up the mitten, because you can get some reps in at pretty low entry cost, and get a really good handle on like where players are going and how teams are setting up, before you, like you're saying, try to put a little bit more money into the gauntlet.
This also seems like a good time to mention promo code Pete here. Underdog is offering a $100 deposit match for first-time depositors. So if you're looking to get in here, splash around a little bit, 20 mitten drafts, well, you could do 40 mitten drafts. If you'd like, you put $100 in, promo code Pete. They will match your deposit up to that. You can also do it for lesser amounts, $20. They'll match that as well, all the way up to 100. So get in on Underdog. I can't imagine anyone who's watched my streams all summer long isn't on Underdog, but had to do my due diligence there. Before we maybe hop in some drafts and get even more granular, why don't we just circle back to kind of the differences between the mitten and gauntlet? Because you touched on it before, and it is significant, kind of the implications for strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I put together a little bit of a chart here. Maybe you can show it. That helps show some of the differences. So hopefully people can see this. But I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me between the wild card and the mitten versus the gauntlet is the gauntlet. There's only one team that advances of the first 6. Versus in the wild card and the mitten, you have to just get in the top 2 of your draft to advance. And so you can kind of see how like the payouts here, and the entry fee multiplier and stuff like that, change a little bit. So like, for the wild card and the mitten, obviously there's a 4 out of 6 chance that you don't get any money and you don't advance. Whereas in the gauntlet, there's a 5 out of 6 chance that you don't advance. But then you do get paid off a lot more in the gauntlet. If you simply just advance to the second round, you're already getting 2x your money. Whereas in the wild card and the mitten, you have to advance, I think, to the third round, off the top of my head, if that's right, just to 2x. And so just kind of thinking through those things a little bit, like, it's kind of interesting to think about like using the gauntlet or something like that, just to kind of be like a bankroll builder a little bit, where you can try to just simply get out of round 1, right? Build a little bit more conservative, just get out of round 1 and you're doubling your money. And maybe that's an approach that some people want to take if they don't fully have it figured out on how to like fully optimize these teams and go, super deep, or they don't want to be as risky, going super strong with like 7 players from 2 teams or something like that. But then you just see like it takes a little bit more to get there on the wild card and the mitten to really get your payoff compared to the gauntlet. I think is kind of interesting.
It's really interesting too, because I think if you weren't kind of as in the weeds with this, intuitively, you might be like, oh, two people advance from the mitten. That's where I can play it more safe and just try to advance. But your kind of EV on that decision isn't as good as playing it that way in the gauntlet, where I assume people will be like, hey, only first person advances. Why don't I just galaxy brain this for a first place finish, anyways? So it almost sounds like if you were trying to just pad your ROI on advance rates alone out of the first round, to do that in the gauntlet versus the mitten.
Yeah. Yeah, like in the mitten, the positive of having two teams advance in the first round, in my opinion, means that you can get crazier with your lineups because you don't have to be as perfect in the first round, right? So you can like you can even load up on like a number one seed and go like five or four or five players deep on a number one seed because you have like a little bit more room for error. Where as in the gauntlet, like I'm trying to talk myself into if it even makes sense to draft a quarterback that is going to be projected on one of the number one seeds because it just seems like it's going to be so hard to get out of the gauntlet with a quarterback that's on a bye. And if you're drafting two quarterbacks and one of that quarterbacks is used on a bye in that first week, well then you're losing some some other player, some opportunity cost for another player in one of the earlier rounds that could help you in that first. So that's where I think it gets really interesting. And like you can just make like very small changes to this, right? So like if you're drafting in the gauntlet and you really like the Packers this year, selfish plug there. I'm a huge Packer fan, but like maybe in the mitten you're going to try to draft Adams, Jones, and Rodgers because even if the Packers get the first round bye, you're still going to be all right because maybe you still have a better chance to go on, but maybe in the gauntlet instead of drafting Rodgers there, you still do like Adams and Jones, but then you maybe pick like an Austin Eckler or somebody like that, or like a Darrell Henderson or somebody at that third round where you're not giving up the quarterback on a bye, and you're getting a little bit more superpower help in that first round to give you the advantage to bump up into the gauntlet. And then if you end up making the Super Bowl and the Packers make the Super Bowl, you still have Adams and Jones. You don't have Rodgers, right? But maybe there's not a lot of teams that even have Rodgers if they get a bye and they make the Super Bowl. Because that's the big thing that's going to be interesting this year, because like everybody saw how all the Brady teams did well last year. Well, the reason the Brady teams did well is because the Bucs were a wild card team that made the Super Bowl, right? And so if teams that went heavy Bucs did really well, which is fine, and it worked out good for them, and that's how you have to do it. You have to draft like heavy teams from wild card, or you have to draft heavy stacks from wild card teams. But if the two number one seeds make the Super Bowl this year, and both quarterbacks are on a bye in the first week, there could be some really thin lineups that get to the finals here, and it's just going to be like, maybe there's not even any teams that have six players or something like that. Maybe there's only like a handful of teams that can roster a full starting five for the Super Bowl. And so that's where I'm interested to see how it works, because like almost everything in best ball right now, we're dealing with such small sample sizes and such like it's just easy for people to kind of look at the results from last year and say, okay, this is what I'm doing this year. But bringing that context in a little bit of the Bucs being kind of that perfect unicorn of a wild card team that made the Super Bowl that was full of studs isn't maybe going to happen this year,
Yeah, and that was why I'm kind of glad that the Patriots now don't have the bye, because basically what was going to happen with them as a low pass volume offense and with the bye, everyone was going to get funneled to the Chiefs and the Chargers and these
Yeah.
more exciting, because it's like, hey, they can get the Brady treatment from last year, wild card that goes all the way. Now it becomes a little bit more interesting, because if you want to play the Pats as going to the Super Bowl as a wild card team, and you're saying, hey, with 4 games, they could double up or score more than some of these high powered offenses who only get 1 or 2 games. Now that's actually interesting.
Yeah. No, that is pretty wild to think about for sure. Like, so when we talk through like some of the number one seed potentials right now, I think it would seem like the Packers are in the driver's seat in the NFC right now after the Buccaneers, just debacle a couple days ago with the injuries. I mean, that was just a killer for everyone everywhere. But it seems like it's going to be tough for them to get there. But then like the AFC seems a little bit more wide open to me, and I think there's still there's still quite a bit of questions there. And that kind of plays out in the ADP right now too. Like I kind of like to focus on skipping an NFC team early. And like I've been trying to build as much as possible. I've been trying to build like Chiefs, or maybe like some Bills early, even like getting Jonathan Taylor and doing a little bit of some Colts action, just because like those are AFC teams that, I mean, shoot, the Bills keep scaring us a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that they're gonna make it, because that's a pretty strong team. And then there's so many like the skill position players on the NFC teams are a lot deeper than the AFC teams in general, and so if you can kind of like try to get a little bit of a deeper AFC team single stack, then you have some more options to pair it up with some strong NFC, opponents, getting two NFC teams or even three NFC teams to pair up, versus the other way around. Like if you go heavy on the Packers, like I was talking about early on, and you spend your first three picks on Rodgers, Jones, and Adams, well, then it gets kind of thin, because all the Chiefs are gone by then. Diggs and Allen are gone by then. Jonathan Taylor's gone by then. Austin Eckler's usually gone by then. And so like you're kind of you're relying on like the Devin Singletaries, the Damian Harris's, like the Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like I don't know, it just gets a lot thinner versus the other side around. You're able to get a ton of good NFC players later in drafts, and so that's like a small kind of shift that I'm trying to focus on as much as possible. But then the other thing that's a kind of a pain in the ass this year is there's like some of these AFC teams that just like don't even have a running back, right? So like the Ravens, I mean, they're teetering on playoff contention right now, but I wouldn't feel comfortable drafting any Ravens running backs. Even like Devin Singletary, I'm not super comfortable drafting a Bills running back. And so like, and then if Derrick Henry doesn't come back healthy and the Titans make the playoffs, then there's no Titans running backs either that you want. So there's just like the AFC is really thin from a skill position standpoint, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good reminder too, going back to the specific player selection stuff and with all the uncertainty in the backfields, like, if you're drafting a bunch of these, you're going to end up with lots of different, Bucks teams and lots of different Cowboys and Packers. Split your exposures, whether that's, checking them, writing them down. Like, I don't have supreme confidence on AJ Dillon versus, Aaron Jones. So I want to split those because there's lots of different ways that could break. I did just want to mention and kind of drive this home as well. Sean saying about the prize structures, a 1 out of 6 to double your money seems bad. I agree. Like, to me, that kind of mentality of just playing to, double your money would be like playing for a min cash in the Millie Maker. Like, sure, could you do that? Yes, but are there way other better avenues to 2x your money? These prize pools are incredibly top heavy, and the goal, in my opinion, and I don't know if you want to share that file again, the goal should be to build teams with first place equity. That's just how I feel about it. That's how I approach best ball. That's how I approach these large field contests. I realize some people have different goals than me, or maybe even philosophical differences of, the most important thing is just getting out of the first round. But I really want to be building teams with first place equity, because that's the only way over the long term.
Uh-oh.
Hey, did John, sorry, John, my computer just like crashed there for a second.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was me or you, but looks like we're good now. Well,
Not bad. I didn't want to leave you hanging there.
no worries. The other thing I wanted to share, so I'll share this other one, which I think is kind of cool to look at from the Gauntlet finals last year. So it's a little bit hard to read, but you can kind of tell with the colors and stuff like that. This is the 42 teams or whatever that made the finals in the Gauntlet last year, and so you can see like the teams that did. I didn't actually put in the final standings here, but the teams that did better obviously had six. There was one team that had, or it looks like a handful of teams that had 7. But then for after that, there were the rest of them had 6, and then there was a lot of 5s and then 4s. I mean, there's this one guy Zoldster made it with no Chiefs or Bucks, so he was he was just dead in the Super Bowl. But the what I thought was interesting is like the Gauntlet, which was a little bit bigger of a tournament. So there was a lot more stronger teams that made it. But then if I zoom over here to like the Gauntlet Part 2, which was a little bit of a smaller tournament, you can see here only there was no teams that had 7, and there was only 3 teams that had 6 players in the Super Bowl, and the rest of the players had, or the rest of the teams had 5, and quite a bit more had less than 5. And so it really just kind of highlights that debate of like, how heavy do you have to get in the Super Bowl? And I've talked with, or how heavy do you want to try to stack your teams for the Super Bowl? And I've talked with Herzig a little bit about this on Twitter, gone back and forth, because obviously Herzig is playing for first place in everything, right? And so he's taken the approach of just loading up on a Super Bowl team, trying to get 8, 9 players into the Super Bowl, and just knowing that he's going to take a lot of attrition in the first couple rounds. He knows he's going to lose a lot of teams, but if he gets 1 or 2 through, he's going to have an outsized advantage over the field. And I've kind of thought of playing a little bit of devil's advocate with him and saying like, okay, well, let's picture like a Bills and Packers Super Bowl, right? So if he gets a team through that has 8 Bills and Packers on it, but I get 2 teams through that have a good spread of Bills and Packers, maybe I'm still covered and have like if I'm able to kind of match the combination, or if I get 3 teams through or something, like if I'm able to match the spread that he has on the Bills and Packers, maybe one of my teams out of 3 has the same chance of his single team that has it's so deep, because I still am able to cover those 8 players with my 3 stacks. And so like it kind of goes back to like what you're talking about, where it's important to track kind of how you're building these teams a little bit. And like, you don't want to just have like a bunch of Rodgers, Adams, and AJ Dillon teams, right? You want to be able to mix it up. You want to have some Rodgers, MVS, Lazard teams. You want to be able to make sure like you're spread throughout. And you don't want all of your, I keep just talking about the Packers because they're the easiest team to think about like right out of the first round, but like you don't want to have all of your Bucks teams paired with only Chiefs, right? You want to make sure that you have your Bucks teams paired with some Titans, your Bucks paired with some Colts, your Bucks paired with some Chargers, stuff like that, and really make sure that you're kind of, if you're building a pretty big portfolio here in these things, you want to try to have a little bit more of a spread there, to try to not just only go all in on like 3 teams, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that discussion could also be framed a little bit just through the specific styles of these offenses. Like, I think the Bills are a pretty good example of where their production hasn't been super concentrated this year. We'll see games where, just this past week where Gabe Davis has just as good of a market share as we would expect from Stephon Diggs. And that's not really, out of the ordinary for how that offense operates. The Chiefs, on the flip side, highly concentrated through Tyreek and Kelsey, and similar with the Packers, highly concentrated through those guys. And so I think that's another thing where it's like, you're definitely more willing to toss in a Gabe Davis and a Cole Beasley, versus tossing in, like, I don't want to be tossing in, Mecole Hardman on one of my Chiefs stacks, because I'd rather have that ammo to get out and then just trust if the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl, it's not going to be a Mecole Hardman game.
Well, and that's also where it becomes important. If you're talking about like the Bills, right, and maybe you're able to draft, start with 2 stronger NFC running backs, right? Maybe like a Darrell Henderson and a Zeke or something. Well, in the draft, in the story that you're telling with your draft, where either the Rams or the Cowboys make the Super Bowl against the Bills, it probably isn't worth drafting Devin Singletary in the 9th or 10th round, because you're just kind of banking on that Henderson or Zeke is the running back that you're going to need in the Super Bowl. And so instead of drafting Singletary, like you said, maybe it's smarter to draft Gabriel Davis or even like Emmanuel Sanders now. I mean, he was a little bit of a better pick before he got hurt, but if he's able to come back and you're able to get an outsized game from Sanders, like, you just kind of have to think through like, okay, if I get to the Super Bowl with this draft, as you get to, rounds 7 or 8 or whatever, what is the team like most likely going to be in the Super Bowl? Do I need to have an extra Bills running back here, a Zach Moss or something? Or is it more than likely that, a the running backs I already have are going to be the one that score points, and I can take another swing on a random pass catcher.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Chris saying the only other concentrated offense is Minnesota. I'd also toss in
Yeah.
the Titans. I think if they do get AJ Brown and
Yeah.
Henry back, the offense is going to be extremely concentrated through them. And they're actually a pretty good mirror of kind of the Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson dynamic there. Patriots offense is interesting too. Before we hop
Yeah.
into some drafts here, how are you thinking about the Patriots? Because they clearly have right now they have the third best odds to get to the Super Bowl. People aren't that excited to basically play any of them except the run game. Now you have the run game uncertainty there. How are you thinking about them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been actually drafting a lot of Patriots, but I haven't been drafting much of Mac Jones. And so how I've been doing it, because Damian Harris is pretty easy to get to in like the sixth round ish, and then like the Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, and Hunter Henry are basically free too in like the ninth or 10th round. And so how I've been attacking the Patriots, and you just fall into some of these situations where if you go strong on NFC early, then you just run out of AFC options. And the Patriots, while they're disgusting and they win 10-7 or whatever, and they don't score a lot of points, they do have like a decent amount of Super Bowl equity compared to whatever teams are left. And so I just kind of go through in my head like, okay, if the Patriots are winning games, it's probably not through Mac Jones like lighting the world on fire. Maybe, but we haven't really seen that from him this year. And so more than likely he's going to be he's typically kind of concentrated on one receiver. I mean, we saw the Hunter Henry game this week. We've seen the Kendrick Bourne game. You would assume there's going to be a multiple touchdown Jacoby Myers game at some point in the future. And so like I don't really see many paths where the Patriots are winning games and Mac Jones is throwing for 350 and 3 touchdowns. And so that's why I'm fine just trying to pair like Damian Harris with one of the receivers and getting, making sure that my Harrison Bourne and my Harrison Myers and my Harrison Henry are all pretty equal, because then if one of those teams makes it, then I still have a good shot of like getting that one receiver that goes off right with the Harris, who's going to see the workload no matter what. And then just kind of hoping the NFC team carries the scoring.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. And it's a similar thing we'll, sometimes do in DFS where it's like you stack up, you do a Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen without Kirk Cousins, because you know that you can get those quarterback points with a higher ceiling elsewhere. And I think that's going to be the thing with Mac Jones. It's like, sure, could he lead them to the playoffs? Obviously, but it's still going to be hard for him to outscore whatever NFC quarterback he meets there.
Right, exactly. And that's the same thing, like, yeah, like you're talking about with the Kirk Cousins, or even like with the Carson Wentz, even like the Ryan Tannehill, like for the most part, these NFC quarterbacks are pretty strong. And so if you're not getting the Allen, the Mahomes, I guess maybe you could argue Lamar, if they are able to, stay healthy enough for the playoffs, then, it gets pretty thin at a quarterback in the AFC. And so then I'm just trying to do more minis of AFC teams and pick it, because there's very strong NFC quarterbacks later. And so you can almost just pivot mid draft on like, well, I didn't think I was going to build a Kyler Murray stack, but I don't really have great options. So I can snag Murray late, and then I can go get Edmonds and go get, Zach Ertz, AJ Green, team old there, and finish it off with a strong quarterback versus trying to like stay rooted in like, I got Taylor first, so I'm going to pair him up with Carson Wentz later.
Yeah. Let's hop in a mitten draft here. We can start to talk on our feet here a little bit. A comment from Carlos in the chat. Jonathan Taylor is going, hi, I'm a Colts fan, but I don't see the Colts in the Super Bowl. This is the kind of, and I'm not picking on you, Carlos, but the kind of thinking that I think you want to get away from in this kind of tournament, where it's not, you have to be right about the take. It's just in this scenario where the Colts make the Super Bowl, Jonathan Taylor is going to be a massive, massive part of that. So you can build really smart teams around him. And even if you think the market odds on the Colts making it to the Super Bowl are a little too high, well, it still happens, however much percent of the time, 4% of the time. And so can you build rosters where that makes sense. Now, if you're only drafting 10 teams, a team that only has a 4% chance of winning or whatever, maybe an 8% chance of making it to the Super Bowl, sure, you don't have to force that. You can just lop off that scenario. If you're building 30, 40, 50 teams, it's probably bad process to just ignore something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we got the first pick here. So the things I like to think through with the first pick is if you take Tyreek, you're not going to get Mahomes.
Mm-mm.
If you take Cup, that's interesting because you can get Hendo and Stafford late, and you can even get Sony Michelle very late. So I kind of like taking Cooper Cup here, simply because the Devontae Adams. So another easy one is Adams plus Jones plus Rogers at the turn. But let's have some fun here. I think we should take Cup, and then we'll kind of see what happens here because Hendo and Michelle are pretty similar in my opinion, and they're both pretty easy to get late, and Stafford's easy as well. So now that we have we know that we kind of want to go Rams here, then we want to be thinking through the AFC teams, and so like more than likely we're probably going to get to maybe like a decision between Eckler and Diggs here. Because I'm guessing that Kelsey and Hill are going to be gone.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And you were kind of talking earlier about maybe breaking ties in favor of the running backs just because they're a more precious resource.
Yeah, I think so. And that, yeah, I think that I would lean Eckler over Diggs. Well, there you go. Diggs is off the board. So, like in the Mitten, I think that we want to try to build a team that's just Rams heavy, and the Rams are pretty attainable. So we have the added bonus of getting 2 out of 6 through. So I think we go heavy on the Rams, and then we just pair it up with a couple AFC teams. And so I would think that Eckler would be the best choice here, because we can still get access to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams later, and have some pretty good studs there.
So
he
Iggy
took
goes.
Rodgers,
Would we want to go Eckler and Keenan back to back here?
Yeah, so just trying to think. Stafford, we took Cup, so Stafford is probably going to make it back to us. So I think that makes sense to go Eckler and Keenan because nobody's going to take.
I can't imagine I was inverted or Epic Daddy here taking Stafford.
Yeah, so I think we do take Keenan, and then we just queue up Stafford to take after this.
And isn't in this scenario, even if we were to get sniped on Stafford, I mean, taking then we can Herbert wouldn't be the worst thing, right?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Then we can just pivot and take Herbert and build some more NFC teams off of Herbert.
So if we do get Stafford, though, I like that thought of loading up on Rams. So would you think this would be like ideally a 4-3-3 build with 4 as the Rams?
Yeah, I think so. I'm actually a decent fan of skipping Henderson and holding out for Michelle a little bit later on. Michelle's going pretty late, and the reason being is because there's still going to be a couple of stronger AFC guys that we can get now versus spending pick on Henderson. And so like just trying to think through. So like Damian Harris is still going to be there. Who else is going to be there? Derrick Henry is probably going to be there in that range. We'll kind of see here what comes up. So the other thing that's interesting to see and is you kind of want to look through what other players are drafting, because like in a perfect world, if everybody is like super sharp and going for stacks, the draft is a lot easier, right? And because everybody's kind of staying to their own like 2 teams. Okay, so let's see, what do we got here? So yeah, we
definitely can grab Stafford. And then you could do Mike Williams and be done with the Chargers. Are there any other Chargers late for our 3 that we would want?
I don't think so. I think that makes sense that we would want to do Mike Williams because we can do we can do Michelle instead of Henderson, and we can do Van Jefferson instead of Odell if both of those go. And I know Higbee hasn't been great, but we can still throw Higbee in there to get us a fourth Ram.
Yeah.
So now we want to start thinking about the next AFC team, I think.
Yes. And also, I always remember some of you guys will be listening to the audio version of this. So our team so far is Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Matthew Stafford, Mike Williams. Very concentrated bets here on the Rams and Chargers. Definitely like how we're able to prioritize kind of the biggest pieces. Like if we get this Rams Chargers Super Bowl, we're going to be in really nice shape.
Yeah, so you can see. So this is really interesting. Ante, if you go back to that real quick, he's got a team that like was almost impossible to draft a couple days ago with Fournette, Brady, Evans, and Gronk. Like that is a very strong team. If those guys get back healthy, and that was only possible like the first couple days of like the wild card, and then all those guys were gone before like middle of round 3. So that's super interesting. A little bit way to lean into some recency bias and just to assume those guys are going to get.
Yeah, I think that was really sharp. I like that build for sure. All right, so it looks like they might let Henderson, fall to us. I mean, we have to take Hendo at that price, right?
Yeah, we got to take Hendo there. And then we want to start thinking through another AFC team. So we've got Damian Harris.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, he is nice. And New England's cheap late. So I think Harris is a pretty good play there. And then that pretty much we're done at running back then.
I would say the other kind of comparable or the next choice would probably be Pittman. Do you think for an ancillary AFC team?
Yeah, the only thing with Pittman is it's just not like we can get so much stronger, in my opinion, with Harris plus a pass catcher. And since Taylor's already gone, like Pittman plus like, I don't know, Pascal or something doesn't like appeal as much to me. The one that is always falling is always going to be there is this Mixon, Chase, Higgins. Like those three guys seem to just keep falling no matter what. And that's a strong, like if Cincinnati makes it, you have like studs right there that you got at the end, kind of like that draft you're pulling up where the Cleveland guys went late and they were all studs.
And I completely agree with you. If the Colts make a run, it's going to be on the back of Jonathan Taylor. But couldn't you still think of it? And I know I've thought through this scenario with some of our FFPC playoff contests where it's like you play the Colts to get out of the first round with a big Michael Pittman game where it's like it's easier to thread the needle on one, Michael Pittman game, but then you're just basically playing it as a loss after that.
Yeah, because I mean that's the other thing that you can do if you go with 4, if you start with like 4 or even like 5 from the NFC, like if we were to go 5 Rams or something, then you can just do some singles in the AFC and like it's a little bit thinner, but like if you have really big conviction that the Rams are going to make the Super Bowl, then you can get yourself like 4 different AFC teams, and like there's a pretty good chance you're filling out a full roster in the Super Bowl. And you're able to get some more studs. Like you're saying, you're able to get a Pittman and like a Joe Mixon or something instead of trying to like always think about pairing those up.
Yeah, that's what we ended up doing on ship chasing the other day. We ended up with a 4-2-2-2 where we had 4 Chiefs and then 2 from each of, and because we were able to get Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill in that, and then we did just toss in, I forget who our 4th was, but yeah, so I think that's viable. Let's see here now. Let's see. I mean,
so we probably want Van
Jefferson, right?
Yeah. That makes our Rams pretty good.
I was going to say, like, I've done a few of these drafts and it feels like we're just hitting the value pockets really cleanly.
Yeah, no, this is working out pretty well. So then the other thing we want to think about is New England pass catcher or like a one-off of Cole Beasley or Jamar Chase.
We got 7 seconds. Who do you think?
Myers. Let's go Jacoby Myers.
All right. My nimble fingers are a little out of practice here. We got him though.
There we go. So now it comes into if we want to do another Patriot and really go 4-3-3, or if we just want to do a one-off AFC with a stud, right?
Right. Right.
So
And
Chase and
and
Mixon are gone.
okay, yeah. And yeah, because we're done with the Rams in the NFC, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you could think through getting Higby, and that's your fifth, but like I don't know. I would rather have a like we have we have some of the stronger Rams, and so I would just try to get a little bit more out there with some of the AFC side because like let's see, so sort by only receiver tight end.
And
Is
would you ever double up and grab like Ramondre, just knowing like, hey, the Pats might run the ball 35 times a game and win a couple games?
I I mean, I don't hate it, but I would only I probably wouldn't do that if I already had 3 running backs, right? So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, so I think either Bourne or Henry here. I think Henry. Let's go Henry.
Hunter Henry.
Yeah, or Bourne's fine.
Yeah.
Bourne's fine, it's
No, I
fine,
like
yeah.
ah all right.
No
I
worries.
didn't get it in time.
Yeah, no, so let's go through, I wanna look at what the other teams that drafted here, because that's the interesting thing that you'll start to see here is, like, if there's quite a few teams that like aren't going to be very correlated.
Right.
Yeah. So what did Iggy do? He did pretty good. Well, he did. Let's see. He did Packers early. Adams, Rogers, Dillon, and then yes. See, so that one's not as strong to me because he's got the Lamar and Mark Andrews, but then he started with a big Packers stack, but then he did San Francisco and Minnesota one offs and a Tampa Bay one off. So he's just like very NFC heavy from a when he already had an NFC heavy stack, and so he should have like targeted maybe more AFC teams. I think.
Yeah. And then Jonathan here in the fifth has the Mahomes, Kelsey, CH start. Then went
Yeah,
heavy on the Cowboys and Cardinals, and then
yeah,
finished with Hardman there.
yeah. That's strong. That's strong. Good. That's a good one.
But yeah, this Tampa Bay by 5 start is pretty hot. And then I was
Yeah.
inverted here, has his Bills. He's a little spread out. 49ers,
Hmm.
Bills. And then kind of scooping some value late with Sony,
Yeah, I guess he did a
Edmonds.
2-2. He did a 4-2-2-2, so that's strong.
I need it's kind of like with our on Run the Sims when it posts the showdown lineup sims, it shows you
Yeah.
the build like the 1-5, the 4-2. It's like I need
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
underdog if you're watching. I need
I
the
know.
build type right up there. Um
But, like,
okay, let's do
that's the thing that I like about these, and, like, the more that like, just take a quick couple seconds to look through the drafts that you just did, you'll start to see that, like, there's already a couple teams that maybe they'll get out of the first round, but, like, they're not very strong, and so, like, you're just kinda in your head thinking, like, "Okay, the more I keep drafting strong teams, like, I'm still having a little bit of an edge here, right?" So now I maybe have, like, a 2 out of 4 chance instead of a 2 chance or something like that, which I think is just cool to kind of like to picture as you keep doing these things is like you keep finding and eventually like it got to the end of the wild card where there was just like a ton of sharp people and like every single draft was like very correlated, very solid lineups, and like that's when it's like okay, I'll take a break and wait till the next context opens up.
for sure. I know you have some other content to do this afternoon. Do you have time to do one more? Or you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, no,
All right, let's
let's
do
do it.
one more.
Let's do another one. I,
Is
I, I
your
love
is
these
your
things, man.
I don't want to blow up your spot, but do you want to plug what you're up to later?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be on the Top Shot Q stream for the MGLE pack here in about 30 minutes. So we'll be talking just Top Shot stuff in the queue for anybody that made it for the MGLE pack.
That's right. Yeah. This is John Boy was on Club Top Shot a
Yeah.
couple months ago. I believe that was like right before your wedding, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. There you go. And yeah, get you a man that can do best ball data and
Yeah.
top shot data. Always enjoy chopping it up with you. It looks like we now are on the turn on the other side with the 1-6, and we flipped with Jonathan because Jonathan had the 164.
go.
So it works out. So
Yeah, that's perfect.
what things have you noticed from more the back half of the draft? What kind of things are you considering?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I want here is a Tyreek Hill and a Patrick Mahomes team. I don't think it's going to happen. It usually doesn't happen. There's a lot of Kelsey Mahomes teams that get drafted here, but if you're able to get a Hill and Mahomes team, like you're already a little bit different than most people. Pretty much everybody that's drafting Hill is just getting Hill,
Yeah.
because if you're at this turn and Kelsey and Mahomes are still available, that's kind of easy. So then what I would try to get a little bit different off a Kelsey Mahomes build, and I would want to try to think through like maybe taking like two running backs. So doing like an Eckler and Jonathan Taylor, and having that strong start with the AFC like onesies, and then we can build like a Kyler Murray stack later, or a Dak stack a little bit later, or even like we can get really crazy and build like a Niner stack towards the end. So yeah, Hill's gone. So I don't really want to do Kelsey Mahomes here if it's available, because that's just
Yeah.
what everybody's doing. Everybody's doing it. So I want to just try to be a little different.
Yeah. And so you're
So I
kind of
think it's fun to do
Taylor
Indy,
Eckler.
like Taylor, and or like we can, since we just did Chargers, like we can do a Bills one, so we can do Taylor and Diggs and just kind of talk people through the
Oh,
Bills
Diggs
a little
goes.
bit more. Diggs goes. So yeah, I think we take Taylor, and then like, so you think through like Fournette, it's going to be hard to fill in a Bucks stack later on, and like yeah, if you don't take him here, it's not going to happen. And then like yeah, I think Taylor Eckler is like really strong start here, because we
Yeah.
have like a
And
ton of optionality with NFC.
And kind of what you were saying too, of like how you like, it sounds like how you like to approach UB is or running back is you're either tossing the running back in with your quarterback stack that you're building, or you're going out of your way like this to get two anchor bell cow
Yeah.
backs. Is that kind of
Yep.
would that be fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. Because now I'm thinking through it like where I want to have. So like we want to get Michael Pittman, for sure, and we don't necessarily need Carson Wentz, but we also want to get like one of Allen and Williams too. So I would say at the next turn we want to get Allen or Williams, and I think we just kind of get weird here and we don't take Herbert and we just try to build a strong NFC stack later.
Okay. And so as far as the options, you mentioned Cardinals seem like a ripe one to get a bunch of stuff late.
Yeah, I think Cardinals are good. I would say Cardinals. I mean, there's been no Cowboys. Go back to the overall screen real quick. I just want to see how the
Yeah.
Cowboys line up here.
Let's see.
So you could CD and oh damn, I didn't know you could do that. That's huge. CD, yeah. So Cowboys are still all there, but like the other middle.
So, I mean, if we are building that Dallas stack, I mean,
Yeah,
being able to
let's take.
get
Yeah.
CD and who else do you think with him? Dak
Well, we could either
or wait on
do
it?
Keenan. Oh wait, we would need Dak, right?
But we
Oh
could
no, we
probably
might
wait
wait
on
on
him,
him.
right?
Yeah. So if we do CD and Amari right here, there's a
Yeah.
decent chance Dak gets back to us, and then we're kind of well.
The thing is don't we still have outs
We
even
don't.
if he does? Like,
Yeah. Well, we want Dak, so I don't think we should do Amari. I think we should do Keenan here, and
okay.
then we can get Dak next and kind of see how we land there with the Cowboys, because we still have Gallup and Schultz that we can get for the Cowboys, and then we still have yeah, and then we still have Pollard if Zeke doesn't go. So yeah, I think the Cowboys are wide open, but we do want to get Dak because now we've kind of, well, I guess we'll see how this happens because we can still pivot Herbert here, if he's still available and Dak goes before him.
I was gonna say Rob announced himself as number 3. I want to be nice, but I wouldn't do Stafford and Mahomes there back to back. I know you're worried about Mahomes then having the bye week, but if you're gonna add that bye week insurance, you want to probably do it at a much cheaper cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the 2 hole here, Rueb is the only other team that still needs one quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so okay, Amari just went. So there's a decent chance he takes Dak since he took Amari also, and he needs a quarterback.
Yeah. Which is fine because we still have Herbert. We can he goes Henderson actually.
I guess he went there with Cup, but then Stafford's already gone. So like in my opinion, you don't take Henderson there. You just wait and pair up a Ram late, and because you're not getting a whole lot of Cup plus Henderson. I don't know. That's just my like quick take. It's fun to watch how these people draft too, as you're doing it, because you can really get a feel for like what people are going after, and if you're able to, because ADP doesn't really matter that much. It only matters to like figure out where people might take the players you want.
Right. And I was going to say, when you're focused on team correlation so much, you can't get hung up on like, oh, I'm reaching 7 spots ahead of ADP. It just does not matter because it's like it's like you have a personal ADP board that is now completely different based on what you did in the first 3 rounds or whatever.
Right.
So,
okay, so we can
are
take
able
Dak.
to get Dak. Yep.
Yeah. And then I mean, we could take Zeke, or we could wait and
wait
then
for Pollard.
Yeah, so then we could do another strong AFC team. Is there, because we're gonna have
So we could add
AFC?
Mike Williams.
Yeah, we could do that. Like let's see. Or we could do a Dawson Knox and just do like a 4-2-2. And so I mean, I don't hate Zeke, and then we're just
taking
done with
Zeke
running back. Yeah.
So we only have 5 seconds. I'll make a case against Zeke. Who should we get otherwise? Mike?
Let's do Knox. Knox over Mike. Oh, that's fine.
Sorry,
no, that's fine.
I didn't get it in time.
No, it's fine. It's fine because we can still work that.
What I was gonna say with Zeke is, and again, granted, I have some personal bias here, but because we already have 2 bell cow backs, and it does seem like the way things have been trending with the Chiefs is Pollard looking better and more efficient. It's like I'd rather play it as Pollard coming on strong for say the last 2 games and let Eckler and Taylor do the work for us early, where Zeke might not even hit our starting lineup in those first couple rounds.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. Yeah, that's a really good point. When you start, like, it's no different than like season long best ball, right? Where if you use early draft capital on 2 running backs like we did, then there's an argument to be made that we should wait a little bit longer to take another running back.
And I know it's not as fun because we just did this exact same stack, but I still I like those Chargers prices and just how concentrated those guys are for kind of their big ceiling potential.
Yeah, the Chargers are very concentrated. The interesting team to me really is the Bills, because like you can okay, we've seen Stephon Diggs have very bad games this year, like often, right? And we've like, it's not like it's like a Tyreek Hill situation where most of the time Tyreek Hill is having a big game. Like Diggs has gone pretty slept on. And so if you're able to just take like a onesie Josh Allen early, and then you can wait until you're able to get Diggs here or a Knox here in like the 7th, 8th round, and you can go Gabe Davis and even Cole Beasley like way late. That's like really interesting because a lot of people are just doing Diggs and Allen early. And so anything you can do to try to get different. So I would think we need to take Michael
Pittman and Gallup.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because I was trying to think through.
The only thing is Pollard is probably going to go, and we have an out with Schultz over Gallup. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Where we don't have, and if we're playing Dallas to the Super Bowl, we probably want that running back.
Yeah, I mean, there's another way you could look at it of if we have Taylor or Eckler in the Super Bowl, they're probably going to be the running back we want. So then we could take Gallup and Schultz. Um,
I
I like
let's
that
do
one kind
that.
of. Yeah.
Let's do that because we've made big bets on both of these. Like we've made two bets that can get us to the Super Bowl with a bell cow back. And then
Hmm.
that's going to be our preferred way to play that Super Bowl is through the Dallas passing game already because we faded Zeke. I kind of think that actually makes the most sense for this construction.
Yeah. So now we just want Schultz. Oh wait, we have 2 picks left. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought we only had one. Okay,
So
so
we
we
only have
have
two. We're done with Chargers. We're going to do one more Cowboy. And then it's do we want one more Colt or one more AFC one off?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to do an AFC one-off because, like, I don't know, like Zach Pascal, T.Y. Hilton, Mo Alley Cox, like it just doesn't really move the needle for me because the way I like to think about it is I'm okay taking those deeper guys on teams that are like a little bit stronger and have a little bit better chance to make the Super Bowl. But if it's the Colts and like they don't have a great chance, then I don't want to take those thinner guys because they're also not going to help me early either, like I want to either get help late or early, and if I don't think they're going to make it late, then they're not going to help me early.
Right. Oh man, I just felt it right now. I felt the hooks in me. Like my instinct right now is I just want to rip off like 10 of these in a row. I knew it was going to
Yep.
happen. I didn't think it was going to happen this quick.
Yeah, man, there's too much fun.
Um
So,
yeah,
like,
so
look at how
would
cheap the
you
Bills
want to do
are.
the
Knox,
Yeah.
Beasley, and Gabriel Davis are still available in the ninth round. Like, that is absurd to me. Like that, I'm gonna make a ton of Josh Allen teams where I just draft him in the third round and don't draft a single Bill until the end. Like that is
I
going to
think
be
that
very
makes a
different.
ton of sense. It actually sets up perfect for that. And it's a little counterintuitive because I'm guessing a lot of people who take Allen generally are pairing him up with Diggs. And so to even build that
Yeah.
without it is pretty
Yep.
unique. So obviously we're going to draft Schultz with one of these. Which of your
Yeah.
Bills would be your favorite? Because we can have whichever one we want. Oh, Gabe Davis did go.
Okay. Yeah. So then, I mean, this might be dumb, but maybe your showdown listeners will like it. I've been skewing a little bit of tight end here since all the playoff games are island games. Tight ends have been going off at island games this year. It makes no sense, but fuck it.
I think it does make sense because if you are comparing Knox versus Beasley, obviously this is half point PPR. The touchdowns are far more important. Beasley, if this was DraftKings scoring, Beasley's probably the pick there. So,
Yeah.
we're
Right.
trying to hit a 2 touchdown game from Knox to help us advance from one of these rounds. And I would say he has a higher expectancy for a 2 touchdown game than Cole Beasley does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
was a
That's a good
very
team.
fun one to build. Sean likes our team here as well. So I'll just recap it at home. We did 2 running backs at the top, a strategy I don't think just by myself I would have been thinking through as much, but as John described it, it made a lot of sense to me that we did CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, Dak Prescott, Mike Williams, Michael Pittman, Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox. So this ended up being what, a 4-3-2-1?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah. I like it.
let's see this. And we'll take a look at Sam here. He's in the 4 hole. I'm team 5. Like how I built, I can put 5 players in 3 different Super Bowl matchups: Buffalo versus Tampa Bay, Arizona, San Francisco. So this is, let me go back to this draft. So this was a Diggs, Fournette, Antonio Brown, Josh Allen, George Kittle, James Conner, Christian Kirk, Eli Mitchell, Gabe Davis, AJ Green. I like this construction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. The mistake that I think people make most often that I see is like they'll start pretty strong with one side, and then when they get to the decision points of like getting some help in the early rounds, like towards the end, right, where they want to take a player that's they'll take it in the same conference as the stack that they're focused on. And yeah, I get it. Maybe there's like maybe the Eli Mitchell is like a little bit stronger than Damian Harris or something like that, but like for the most part, you just want to give yourself those outs of having that correlation in the Super Bowl if it happens. So that would be like the biggest takeaway I would say is is there's a lot of situations where you come up and you're just like, oh, well, maybe I just want this guy for the first round. Still try to always use the other conference because there's still that small chance that it's going to end up in the Super Bowl for you.
Yep. We'll review a couple more of these teams here, and then we'll get John on his way to his Top Shot stream. Epic Daddy here, Tom Brady, Evans, Gronk, Henry, AJ Brown, Mixon, Jamar Chase, Marquise Brown, Baltimore, Ronald Jones. So basically heavy on the Bucks, and then playing 3 kind of more under the radar long shot AFC teams.
Yeah, but that's good because he didn't get Fournette, so then he got Henry and Mixon, which is strong, right? 2 strong running backs again. So I think that's pretty sharp when you think about it.
Yeah.
And then he filled in with the Ronald Jones flyer.
Silas asking thoughts on a solo QB team. I mean, I feel like solo QB is the dominant and preferred strategy for this format. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of depends like how you feel about doing these things, right? Solo QB is probably going to give you the best chance to do well in the Super Bowl, but at the same point, like if you're not drafting like a huge portfolio, then I kind of like if I were only maybe people wouldn't agree with this, and this maybe isn't the most like game theory optimal way to do it, but if I'm only drafting like 5 teams, then I want to try to have like those teams have the most Super Bowl chances within them. And so instead of just doing a 4 like 3-3 or something like that, I would actually do like a quarterback from each conference and pair them up with a running back and a receiver, and then do like a running back receiver from one conference and 2 receivers from another conference, because that gets you 3 combinations of 5 players in the Super Bowl and then 1 combination of 4 players in the Super Bowl. And it's just like it's safer. It's a much safer way to do it. And it's probably not the optimal way to do it, but it is still nice. Like if you're able to string together like 10 teams that have like very strong combinations of potential 5s. So if you're able to get like 50 combinations of 5 players in the Super Bowl, that still has potential to do really well in these tournaments. Because you can see like when I was showing the data for how the last year's teams did, like the teams that finished well had a lot more players, had the 6 and sometimes the 7 players. But there was like a ton of teams that only had 3, only had 2 players that made it. And so if you can give yourself a bunch of exactly 5 player combinations, I still think you're going to be live in that final round if you make it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, John, I'm going to get you on your way. Everyone who wants more Jon Jackson in their life, hop over and check him on the NBA Top Shot Twitch stream for this pack drop. Follow him on Twitter as well. It's at JohnBoyBeats, correct?
Yeah, at JohnBoyBeats.
Awesome. Well, best of luck. I'll probably try to keep this rolling every Tuesday until the playoffs, doing a little build and strategy show. Again, thank you so much. Get $100 with your deposit match on Underdog if you haven't signed up over there with promo code Pete. We will see you guys next time. Good luck in those drafts.